participation. However, in accordance with the expiration of Assembly Bill 361's teleconferencing provisions, please refer to page 4 of the agenda regarding the commissioners listed CCDA Executive Committee meeting locations. There were 2 amendments to the agenda. First was Friday, April 1st, 2022. And the second and final agenda was distributed on Monday, April 4th, 2022. The most recent agenda can be found on the CCDA website. The commissioners listed CCDA Executive Committee meeting locations are as follow. Commissioner Chris Downey, Chair of the California Commission on Disability Access. His location will be at Bauer Worcester Hall, room 356 in Berkeley, California, 94720. Commissioner Guy Lemus, past immediate chair of the California Commission on Disability Access. His location will be at 7121 Magnolia Avenue, suite number G in Riverside, California, 92504. Commissioner Sue L. Hessen, she is the chair of the California Commission on Disability Access, Education and Outreach Committee. Her location is at 9433 Ives Street, Bellflower, California, 90706. This meeting is being captioned and recorded. To assist in this effort, please state your first and last name each time you speak and speak loud and clear. The live captioning link has been included in the chat for your use. Public participants can use the raised hand function to alert the committee of when they would like to speak. And we will also give an opportunity for the public members who have called in to the meeting, at which time they can unmute themselves. If you are attending this meeting via teleconference, please press *6 on your keypad to unmute or mute yourself. If you would like to alert CCDA, press *9 to telephonically raise your hand and CCDA staff will call on you. Please remember to mute yourself if you are not speaking in order to reduce noise. If you are having technical difficulties throughout the meeting and need assistance, please use the chat function to alert CCDA staff or email ccda@dgs.ca.gov.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to agenda item number 1, roll call, the moment Teresa's been waiting for.
Thank you. Commissioner Chris Downey.
Present.
Chair Commissioner, okay. Immediate past chair, Commissioner Guy Lemus.
Present.
Vice Chair, Commissioner Doug Wheely.
I am present, and I believe you understand I'm out of state, so I'm participating today but not voting.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sue L. Hessen.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Brian Holloway. Commissioner Brian Holloway. Okay. Commissioner Michael Paravagna.
Present.
Thank you. Chair Commissioner Downey, we do have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. So are there other members that need to be identified?
Yes, we have here Commissioner Drake Dillard. We also have here
Even a whole crowd of people had a hard time getting that.
Somebody
Commissioner
needs
Jacqueline
to mute
Jackson.
themselves if they could.
Yes, we have Commissioner Jacqueline Jackson. Yes, we also have here legislative consultant Karina Roy.
It survived a long 5 minutes without air while the line was being checked, and then came back to get the hook out. This wolf was shot, struck on its back,
And we also have Commissioner Ida Claire.
So the rest of us have to resuscitate the animal like you. But it worked.
Are there any other members of the commission that we would like to acknowledge themselves at this moment?
Teresa, this is Ida Claire. I just, because there was a last minute switch in my speaking on behalf of DSA and not Eric Drever. I don't know if this compromises Bagley Keene because I am a commissioner and my site has not been reported because I was not planning to attend. I am not a voting member, so I just want to make sure that I'm not compromising any Bagley Keene issues because I can sign off and come in to speak as DSA and then exit again. So I don't want to cause any issues for CCDA. Can anyone advise?
This is Michael Paravagna. I think you're fine, as long as you're not voting and you don't. So I think it's all clean.
Thank you.
We also have Emily Miller from Senator Brian Jones' office. Are there any other members of the commission that would like to publicly acknowledge themselves?
Just as a reminder, whoever is on the phone needs to mute because we're getting a lot of disturbing cross sound.
Someone's TV is on in the background. That's better.
Thank you.
Chair Commissioner Downey, no one else has acknowledged their presence from the commission.
Okay. How about any members of the public?
Charlene Ornelas, San Diego.
Chair Commissioner Downey, I do not see any indication in the chat as well of any other members of the public that would like to acknowledge themselves.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to item number 2, approval of the meeting minutes from our last executive committee meeting held on January 12, 2022. Assuming all have had a chance to read it that need to have, are there any questions? Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve?
I move.
I move to approve the January 12th executive committee minutes.
That was Commissioner Michael Paravagna. Could I have a second?
Commissioner Al-Hassan,
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. Commissioner Al-Hassan, thank you. Okay, then we move on to agenda item number 3, comments from the public on items that are not on this agenda. So Teresa, is anybody indicating a desire to speak?
Chair Commissioner Downey, I do not see any hands raised or any indication in the chat that there are members of the public that would like to address an issue.
Okay. So then agenda item number 4, legislative bill tracking. Let's see. So we have 6 bills to present on this. So Phil, I'm to refer to Phil McFall to introduce Karina Roy.
Thank you. Yes, Karina Roy, are you available?
I am.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much.
Okay. So we'll start with AB 1604 by Assemblymember Holden, known as the Upward Mobility Act of 2022. This bill is essentially a reintroduction of AB 105 from last year. That bill had been vetoed by the governor. This bill requires that by January 1st, 2023, all state boards and commissions consisting of 1 or more volunteer members or commissioners to have at least 1 board member or commissioner from an underrepresented community as defined. Underrepresented community includes individuals who self-identify as Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, Asian, Pacific Islander, Native American, Native Hawaiian, Native Alaskan, LGBT, veterans, or the physically or mentally disabled persons, as defined under Government Code Section 12926. These provisions only apply as vacancies on the boards or commissions naturally occurs, and it applies only to vacancy appointments by the governor, the chair of a board or commission, the speaker of the assembly, or the president pro tem of the Senate, or any combination thereof. The bill also requires the state personnel board to investigate complaints filed by employees in a state agency's EEO program and personnel office. It would also be required to investigate complaints by other civil service employees, applicants, or members of the public that allege violations of civil service law and report those findings to the state personnel board. This bill has been heard in Assembly Appropriations and will likely be moving on. The next bill we have is AB 1733 by Assemblymember Quirk. This is another Bagley-Keene bill. It would specify that a meeting under the Act includes a meeting held entirely by teleconference, and it would require that all open meetings must be held at least in part by teleconference. The body must provide the public with the means to remotely hear and observe the meeting, as well as a two-way audiovisual platform or telephonic service so that they can participate in the meeting. The bill would strike the requirement to notice the physical location of each commissioner if participating remotely, and it would no longer require commissioners' presence in a single physical location in order to establish a quorum. However, the bill would require that for each meeting, the state body must also provide at least one physical location that is accessible to the public. The meeting's agenda must still be posted 10 days in advance of the meeting on the state body's website, as well as at the physical meeting locations. And the notice must now specify the means by which the public can remotely participate in the meeting. And while the notice does not need to disclose a remote location from which a member is participating, any member attending remotely has to disclose whether another individual 18 or older is present in that room. If the state discovers that remote transmission has failed and cannot be rectified, then the body must adjourn, notify participants, and then it must notify them of when it's going to reconvene and how they may rejoin that meeting. This bill has been referred to the Assembly Governmental Organization Committee and the Businesses and Professions Committee, but no hearings have yet been set. Next up, we have AB 1795 by Assemblymember Vince Fong. This is another Bagley-Keene bill. This one would amend Bagley-Keene to require state bodies to permit persons to attend both by in-person and remote participation, where remote participation is defined as participation at a location other than the physical location designated in the agenda and via electronic communication. This bill has been assigned to the Assembly Governmental Organization Committee. However, no hearing has been set. Next up, we have AB 2164 by Assemblymember Lee. This targets disability access funding. This bill would make permanent the increased fees that were imposed on local building permits or business permits imposed originally by AB 1379 by Assemblymember Thurman in 2017. It would require both DSA and local jurisdictions to use a portion of those funds to provide financial assistance to small businesses for construction of physical accessibility improvements. It would also require local jurisdictions to submit annual report information on the use of those funds to CCDA in addition to DSA. This bill was heard in Assembly Appropriations today, April 6th. Next up, we have AB 2917 by Assemblymember Mike Fong. This bill would add complaints relating to internet accessibility to the types of accessibility related complaints which attorneys must submit to CCDA. It would also require CCDA to develop educational materials related to accessibility standards for websites. The bill was heard in the Assembly Judiciary Committee on April 5th, and it will head to the Appropriations Committee next. Finally, we have AB 2962 by the Assembly Committee on the Judiciary. This bill is to clarify the California Legislature's intent regarding AB 1521 so that federal courts do not feel obligated to deny supplemental jurisdiction over construction-related accessibility claims brought in federal court. This has been referred to the Assembly Judiciary Committee, and that is all the bills we are currently tracking for CCDA at the moment.
Thank you, Karina. With that, are there any questions by members of any subcommittee chairs or other members of the commission? Any questions or comments on this agenda item?
Chair, Commissioner Downey, I do not see any hands raised.
Okay. How about any comments from or questions from the public on this agenda item?
Chair, Commissioner Downey, I do not see any indication of a hands raised from the public.
Okay. I did hear somebody, it sounded like maybe somebody was trying to speak up, but maybe it was background noise.
Mr. Paravani, I would like to thank Karina Roy. You've done a yeoman's job lately reporting to us, and I want you to know that it's very much appreciated.
Of course.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, then moving on to agenda item number 5, equal access to public education under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Let's see. So staff, if you haven't already, please project the relevant articles from the ADA. Okay.
Chair, Commissioner Downey, I do have the projection.
Yes. Okay.
On the screen.
Thank you. Right. So is there any comment on this? I'm not having much guidance here in terms of if there's a someone facilitating this discussion or addressing the topic, or if it's just to be an open conversation amongst the commissioners.
This is Commissioner O'Hesson, and this was brought up at one of my committee meetings in regards to several parents and students requesting our assistance and guidance in regards to having public meetings accessible to parents and students of special needs. So it was brought up by Commissioner Guy Lemus, to have this discussion among the executive committee to further identify how we can best assist it. Is this something CCDA, as part of our accessibility guidelines that we follow in regards to public access, as we do with business and other public entities, transitions over to education?
Yeah, more about how it relates to our mandate for the work that we do.
Yes.
So yes, thanks for that summary of the situation. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
this is Commissioner Lemus.
uh-huh.
My recommendation was this is not within the scope of the committee, and I didn't want to waste the parents' time having them kind of get organized as if CCDA is really going to be able to work in this area. Under our current mandates, we don't have any support to do so. And there are plenty of organizations who are state and federally funded to advocate for parents for kids with special needs. Whether they're happy with those organizations is another issue. But we had said at the last meeting that Commissioner Al Hassan in particular said she at least wanted to give, if we were going to give them some referrals, to like have them to be able to go somewhere. And I agree with that. But there are plenty of places in the state for parents to go to get that type of support. I don't really think that we are equipped to do the types of things that they're discussing about. We've talked about program access. We all think program access is equally important, but that's not necessarily what our charge has developed to be over the years. And we don't have staff that even has expertise in that area. We have been building systems based upon building accessibility primarily. So my hope was that we would help these parents be redirected to an appropriate body that could actually help them, so that we don't spend all of our outreach and education time hearing from parents about program access and special ed, which is not really our bailiwick at the present time. And so that's where I'm coming from, because I think there's other things that we need to do as a board and a committee, and I want to be respectful to the parents that Ms. Commissioner Al Hassan has heard from, and point them in some proper directions. I have some thoughts on that since I've been doing special education law for 22 years, and I worked for an agency that does a lot of special ed advocacy at the state and federal levels. So I think that's kind of where I'm coming from anyway, and I thought we would have a little bit more discussion today about that. So that's, from my perspective, why it's on the agenda.
This, that was a great, yes, and I do agree with you, Commissioner Lemus. I wanted to emphasize is that a lot of the complaints that were presented to me and also to the executive committee was the lack of access via live streaming. So it has to do more with school districts actually providing an alternative to board meetings and public meetings to be more accessible to students with disabilities and their parents. That was the main focus, was lack of access to meetings. So I just wanted to narrow the focus because it's not global over programmatic issues related to special ed. It was more related to having access to meetings. That was my understanding. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you would know better than me because they were coming to your committee. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to dispute that at all. What I would say is that it's an interesting issue, Commissioner Al Hassan, because the parents don't necessarily stand in place of their children. So they don't necessarily even have an ADA claim because they're saying they don't have access to school district meetings. Has nothing to do with the parent or the child's disability. So I'm trying to understand when they say the nexus of that. So especially during COVID, almost everything is via Zoom. The local school districts are subject to the same Transparency Sunshine Act laws as we are.
Right.
So in the past, pre-COVID, that has meant that you can come to a board meeting in person. I think during COVID, many of them have offered Zoom links now. So I don't know what the issue is now. If they're trying to make the argument that because they have special needs children and are not able to come to the board meeting in person, that is not necessarily a covered issue. Now that does not mean that they can't lobby legislators to say this is an issue that falls between the cracks, and is this something that can be addressed? And obviously you could imagine that's going to have some financial impact to the state if you are going to now make school districts have to accommodate non-protected classes of people. Parents of kids with disabilities is not a protected class under the UNRU Act. So it's not discrimination to do that. So this is not an ADA issue. This is a related issue. And I have heard this before over my years, and I understand the frustration, but it doesn't really match with the current scope of protections in the state. But I think that it would be worthwhile for them to kind of tease out some of that with some lawyers that may be able to point them in the right direction. And you know, there's a number of the big advocacy groups that perhaps we could connect with and say, would you be willing to have a conversation with these parents to kind of brainstorm with them? And the you know, the Oakland group, there's at least 3 different organizations that come to mind. One is statewide disability rights. Disability Rights California, which
That's
is
what I was
statewide.
thinking about, right? I was
And
thinking
they're
of-
probably the biggest of
Mhm.
one, and they're probably the only one that deals with a variety of scope of issues. And they may even have a grant around technology, if I recall. So, you know, and we could also, maybe just to be helpful, we might be able to, you and I might be able to, you know, call Disability Rights California or have staff do it, but one of us probably be helpful to call to explain the situation and see if they would at least be able to maybe have a Zoom call with the folks and see where they're going to go. And also,
I think that's a great recommendation. Absolutely.
yeah, I think we should at least do that, because this
Yeah.
really is not. This is really not where we can go right now, particularly when it's actually not specifically related to the ADA. It's a kind of a supplemental where it reminds me of, you know, I'm being careful how I say it, Commissioner Al-Hassan, because arguably, as I'm sitting here racking my legal brain, you know, I remember the discussions of when someone's using a personal care assistant. You know, there were some protections for those folks. Being a parent doesn't necessarily make you a personal care assistant for your child, but there are some similarities. So that's, you know, that's why I'm sitting here going, it would probably be good for them to speak with someone to see if, you know, maybe there is a argument to be had under the scope of this, but that would be the group to kind of make that call, I think, and have the expertise to really look at that and the current case law. So I move that we have a conversation with some advocacy organizations to see if they would be willing to talk to the parents who've been coming to your meeting, ultimately set something up for them to have a talk, which I think will happen. And then we can explain that this is really not something we can continue to put a lot of bandwidth in anymore, because it's not something that we're trained or equipped to do under the current priorities of the board. That's my motion.
Okay. And so any other issues in regards to architectural barrier removal at schools, that would also fall under Title II?
Yeah,
and not fall-
architectural.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, architectural barriers, if there's architectural barriers and someone wanted to come and talk to us about that, I would be open for us to at least listen to that and have that conversation. Because, you know, remember, there's at least one law, and staff, I know some staff is new. This is why I wish Angela was here today, but Commissioner Paravania, you may remember, isn't there a bill that did get signed into law that says we have to keep track of the accessibility plans for the community colleges?
Mr. Paravonia, I don't recall that.
I have a vague recollection that got signed into law, but it didn't necessarily spell out how we were going to look at it, but it named us specifically, and I think that got passed. So I'm just saying, given that piece, you know, that's an architectural access piece, but that's not a program access piece. That's an architectural access piece. So what you talked about before, I would argue is not program access. I would argue it is architectural access. If you can't get to a building, that's under our bailiwick.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
If you can't participate in a program, not because of a physical barrier, but other barriers like policy barriers, right? That's program access.
Right.
And that's the piece that we originally wanted to be able to look at both, but the way the law has formed around us, it's clear that our priorities under ADA and physical barrier removal type of things.
And I think that's important to really clarify with them, that we're not really, that our guidelines and our priorities in regards to this committee really focuses more on architectural barrier removals versus programmatic. And I think once we make that distinction, it might help reframe things in their mind.
This is Chair Commissioner Downey, and it's also important to note that we're not an enforcement board. We're involved in education and outreach.
Right.
So it's just a photo of acknowledgement of what it is we do within that area.
Right. That's absolutely true. But I wanted to really define some clear boundaries for this group so that they also would know in reference point for future, anything that comes across their path, what direction to go in regards to resources.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. And I think this is Chair Commissioner Downey. I do think it was important for this commission to address it and to be helpful in pointing in the proper directions and not just leaving the item floating unresolved. So thank you, past Commission Chair Guy Lemus, for requesting this to be agendized, and Commissioner El Hassan for addressing the issue. So thank you. So Commissioner Guy Lemus, you had made a motion. Was that a motion to take a vote on, or?
I don't think it was.
Yeah.
I don't think we had it. I'm not sure if we listed it as an action item. So first I have to figure out, was it appropriate? But I think we can still do that without having a formal motion.
That was my point. Yeah, we can certainly do that.
I think we're good.
Yeah. Okay. You slipped into legalese there on me.
I did. Sorry.
Then we'll let that be left hanging. So thank you for that. Hope this was helpful to all, and ultimately to those parents. So thank you. So agenda item number 6. Actually, I didn't ask if there are any comments from the public on that item.
This is Commissioner El Hassan, so I wanted to clarify, we're not voting on it.
Correct.
Okay.
Chair Commissioner Downey, I do not see any members of the public with their hands raised.
Okay, thank you.
Also, Chair Commissioner Downey, I'd like to indicate that Commissioner Holloway has just arrived.
Yeah. I didn't hear the trumpets upon his arrival. So.
Oh, I did already.
Okay, well, that moves us on to agenda item number 6. Revenue reporting. Sorry.
Commissioner Downey, I'm actually.
Oh, yeah, Commissioner. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, it says Commissioner Paravaglia, but I'm actually going to leave this one off. If you don't mind.
Okay. All right. Is that Phil?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So actually a good news story, and we just want to call some attention and action to some revenue that we have available to us. So we've talked past about the high frequency litigation fund, the funds that we receive from high frequency litigation. And so just to do a quick recap, from 2015 to 2019, we netted $99,000 CCDA. So we have $99,000 available to us. And then again, in 2020 to 2021, we gained an additional $20,000. Now those funds are available to us, but they need to be used by June 30th, 2024, as you can see there in the graphic. And so what I'd like to do today is kind of open up discussion around some potential uses for that approximately $120,000 that are available to us. I know Commissioner Paravaglia had some things he wanted to say, but this is something that we wanted to kind of bring to attention because it seems like 2024 is a long time away, but it's actually a little over 2 years. So it's moving fast, so we want to make sure that we know we're on last minute scrambling trying to use these funds. So Commissioner Ferrari,
Yeah, this is Commissioner Paravani. I requested that this be put on the agenda today so that we can begin discussion and planning. And the good news about this is that there's a reasonable assumption that can be made that these funds will continue at probably about 20,000 a year. But we do have some funds that we need to address. And sometimes choices are hard because there's probably a very long list of things that could be done with these dollars that would be productive. And I think this committee needs to think through how we want to spend it, whether we want to spend it on one particular project, whether we want to split it and spend it on more than one, how do we operationalize that, and all those things that come to mind at this point in time. I'm remembering Commissioner Wheelie several times saying, when we do something, it has a price tag. And that is absolutely correct. But now we've got some funds to address some of those things. So I'd like to open it up for brainstorming and thought.
This is Commissioner Elhassan. And I was thinking about what we talked about previously in our educational outreach committee about PSAs and actually developing something. I know something's already been out there, but we were looking at, and I think Angela's brought this up too, getting more focused in regards to our messaging. And if we were to do that, do a more updated public service announcement that would be able to be publicized either on YouTube or other social media avenues. It's just some thought. I'm just brainstorming some things that we had talked about in the past. And also like some other type of brochures or handouts that I know like the checklist committee has developed something and we did something on our outside dining area. But are there other things that we want to look at actually publishing in regards to our work? Something that we have that we needed to have updated or something new given our current circumstances as a result of COVID and access.
We had talked this, Paravani again, we talked at one point in time about putting guidance documents and support on an app. I don't know what kind of funds or staff time that would take, but it might be good to put that in the mix of things to consider. Also, I'll talk about it when I do my report, but we're opening discussions with the PUC, and they're starting rulemaking on making Uber and Lyft types of services accessible to wheelchair users, and they're hoping that the commission can assist them. So there's all kinds of different things out there.
Well,
Given
our strategic goals that we identified, shouldn't our spending be revolved around that? That's what I was thinking.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Given our strategic goals that we have identified for our commission, that our spending be around meeting those objectives?
That makes sense.
This is Commissioner Holloway. I'd like to hear what our staff thinks would be some ideas, because they live this day to day, and they're sort of the experts in the room, in my opinion. And so I'd like to hear what they think might be some ideas for these funds.
absolutely. And you probably hear us over here whispering, but a couple things that we've talked about are toolkits. Definitely, those seem to be very useful and handy. Also, the application that Commissioner Caravagna alluded to, that's something also that we with the accessible parking campaign, which I'll go over a little bit later, that's something that we have discussed as well. So really around the lines of materials, developing materials to get out to the businesses in order to help them along with understanding some of the challenges they may face. That's, staff, that's really, kind of picking up where Angela kind of left it, is just to continue to develop material. So I think if we're talking about this $120,000 and possibly ongoing, I think, based on the way technology is going and applications, a lot of people are using applications. And I think that's something that we should, definitely look into as a something to develop. And there's a lot of different things we can use. We can develop apps around. Now, staff doesn't know how to develop apps unless somebody has a secret talent I don't know about. But we would have to think about how we would go about, I don't know how much it costs to develop an app and how much $120,000 would get us. So that's, that portion of it, we'd have to kind of do a little bit more research on. That would be probably the two biggest things that I would say staff has discussed. And, like I said, picking up from where Angela left off.
Yeah, as Chair Commissioner Downey, I think the idea, the application is a very compelling one. I do think it would require some guidance from some appropriate place in terms of feasibility, what's feasible, given the range of ideas. The last time we discussed it, a lot was thrown out there. Lots of different opportunities. We probably need to start with one, a focus, and develop that. And the first thing that had been on the radar had been the inspector's checklist, to make that a dynamic, a web-based tool that could work on an iPad or a tablet, so that all the references that are just references to the various points of the regulations would then have a dynamic link taking you there, but also the ability to complete an inspection on that tablet. The same thing perhaps could be done with I don't know if the certified access specialists do anything like that, but those sorts of things to get towards a dynamic thing that could be used by professionals, but also by individuals wishing to track their own process and finding where to go. It's a fairly complicated thing. The benefits of being able to get the data directly straight in and making sure that's useful and beneficial. A parallel thing would be whether it's just like the parking toolkit, the same kind of thing of getting a really robust, defining what elements, what it really wants to be, and seeing what's feasible. But I think at some point we going to need some help on, what are our top, well, I guess as a commission or as a committee, it could be decided, what are the top desires, but at some point talking about what's feasible within those means, and what kind of help would be needed to make that happen. I do like the idea as well that Commissioner Al-Hassan had of the PSAs. We had the experience of working with a completely pro bono donated effort towards the development of 2 PSAs, ultimately of which we had very little control over, and we weren't really set up internally to advise that properly if that opportunity had ever been there. So I think we've learned from that, but it would be good to, if we want to do that, this might be an appropriate time to do it and to figure out what it would take to have that done, either professionally or to be able to be supported better internally, so that if we were to work with a college, university, we might be able to be better positioned to be able to get a more usable and properly guided PSA. I would like to say SF State, we've had conversations with them. They would be in a much better position to do that, having a much better grounding in accessibility in disability culture and rights. So we do have good avenues for knowledgeable partners if we wanted to go the more low budget or free route, so long as we can support it internally with the staff in our commission.
This is Commissioner Olhesson. I'd like to add to that, Commissioner Downey, is that the ADA specifically overall hasn't really been, and I'm thinking of our new generation, our youth, have really very little knowledge or understanding of the ADA and its impact in regards to being the second largest Civil Rights Act passed for people with disabilities. That's why I was kind of thinking more in line of this PSA as an educational tool for our younger youth, which could be actually catered or looked into more advanced. And I was thinking in line with some of the art schools and animation schools that would really be new age, I guess. I don't want to say new age, but more updated in regards to what this generation looks for, and also can be really used cross-generational tool. I think, and this is just my personal perspective, is that we've lost our voice among our youth in being able, you're not going to see what we saw in the early 90s, where people with disabilities actually went up and chained themselves to their wheelchairs and to the stairs of the congressional to make a point. I don't think our generation, this generation, even has a clue to the shoulders that they're standing on. And I think that's really important to deliver as far as an educational tool. That's just my input.
Yeah. This is Commissioner Downey. I agree with that. As a professor at UC Berkeley these days, I'm constantly reminded that students today run around when the ADA was passed. And for all they know, it's always been there.
Right.
And just a matter of, yeah, just like any law, it's just there. So yeah, celebrating that history, sharing it, making it part of the dialogue and retaining that, it's important. I would also like to, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe it's empowering in its message, and it's let people with disabilities have a voice as every other minority group in this nation. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Downey again. I just wanted to add the other thing in terms of PSAs or ways of where to put effort. So much of this commission is really about the art of persuasion, and it's about reduced litigation by means of increased compliance. And so that's at the core of what we're about. And I think it's important as we look at options that we target those things specifically to really affect change and increase compliance. And really through the sort of the idea of persuasion, how to get the most persuasive arguments out there to change the attitudes and have greater effect.
This is Commissioner Parravani. I think we've got two really interesting ideas. And I think at some point we're obligated to look at where we can get the best bang for our buck in terms of impact. And I don't think today we know.
Right.
But the next step is to have staff do some research into both of these alternatives and present relevant factors to us at our next meeting.
That sounds like a good plan. I appreciate this, Commissioner Downey. Thank you, Michael.
So I just want to understand, so we're going to look into the cost of the PSA. I know that can be you know, are we talking about something that's like a 1 or 2 minute, or are we talking about like a, I don't know, 10, 15 minute? Because I know that's going to have something to do. I think, you know, we'll do the research. I'll come up with the options that we have. I like your comment about reaching out to the colleges, Sac State, some of the local colleges, and we will absolutely do that. I just want to, they're going to ask me questions. I believe they're going to say, well, what do you mean? What kind of, you know, educational tools do you want to develop? So if we can kind of like maybe narrow it down into, is this something we want to do that's more of a, you know, a 3 to 5 minute PSA or a 30-second PSA, or is this a commercial, or is this something that's going to be, I know you talked about YouTube, and I know everybody's on, what's the TikTok.
Well, if I could, yeah, this is Commissioner Downey, if I could, I'd like to recommend or ask that the Education and Outreach Committee look at providing, working on that guidance. I think that's their proper place to do that, to sort of give you enough of a starting point to take it out to the streets or talk it more meaningfully internally. So that's one strategy. I think the app thing is another good strategy, a good option as well that I wouldn't want to have dropped. But I think maybe that is more a function of the checklist committee, maybe to think about the tools they're developing or have been developed and what might be a powerful place to start that kind of operation, even if it's identifying 1, 2, or maximum 3 options that could be sort of explored relative to complexity and what it would take to get that kind of thing. You know, so scope it out and sort of define what those things might be.
This is Commissioner Holloway. I'm kind of leaning more towards the app, because the app can be updated as needed. It can have lifespan and evolve, whereas a PSA, oftentimes once it's done, it's done, and over time it can become stale and no longer applicable or timely. And so I'm kind of leaning more towards something that has a longer lifespan, like an app that can be adjusted and, you know, modified and completely changed if you want to the time and the need.
As Commissioner Downey, I see the wisdom of that. I do, however, see the validity of both. Largely, the PSA is on the basis of persuasion, public persuasion, and the outreach. That's a big part of it. But the tool is also a big part. And it would be fabulous if we could get something happening on both fronts. And I think the issue, with the app would be added, would be maintained, that need to be maintained over time and expanded, added to over time. And likewise, the PSA, that's not as self-maintaining, or it's not as dynamic. But once we get through the process of doing it, it should be less complicated and challenging for us to produce good material in the future, so that maybe every year, every 2 years, there's an update, there's a new PSA. And so within the 20 grand that comes in annually, there's money to both update and maintain the application, but also to do a new PSA.
I agree with you, Commissioner Downey. I'm nodding my head as you're talking, and I think too, there's no limitation or restriction about a PSA not being part of an app. I think that might be something that we can even look at. But I'm excited to bring it to our Educational Outreach Committee to further discuss and really clarify for staff to look into. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to see if there are any other comments. It's 2:30, and so we're racing through our time here. We got more agenda to go. So any further comments from commissioners?
Chair Downey, it's Commissioner Wheelie, and I would like to briefly discuss going back to past practices. I think we are very effective when we are meeting with our constituencies in person. And I would like to see us getting back to being more active and moving our commission hearings around the state, different locations. And I would also like to see us getting back to the community meetings that we had with such great success prior to the pandemic. We were just getting going on that effort. We're making good traction, and I would like to see us pick that back up again. Now that we have some funds for it, maybe we can do so.
Yeah, agreed. This is Commissioner Downey. Thank you, Commissioner Wheelie, on that. That was in my mind as well. Thank you for voicing it. It's important that we get back there, and those things do cost money, and it was always a challenge to do it without it, those resources, and trying to find businesses, organizations to sponsor it. So having our own ability to make things and get it going. Sponsorship is great, but it's good to have the ability to support it internally. So an important step to take, as is getting around the state. So thank you for bringing that up. Any other comments?
Chair, Commissioner Downey, we have Charlene Ornelas who would like to speak or has her hand is raised.
Okay, if we have no other commissioners, I'll then move on to public. So if there are no commissioners. Okay.
Okay, what is been said about doing PSAs and stuff is very important. But one of the big problems for the access and people trying to work at achieving it is many of our younger people don't know where we came from or how we got here. The other problem is that ADA, unlike most laws, is individually complaint driven with notices given out ahead of time. And most people don't know about that, or they don't want to go through the long process it takes to go through it. But educating people as to where we came from and why we're doing this and how it affects people with disabilities, but benefits people without disabilities is an important thing to bring forward as you're doing your PSAs. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to address this item? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 7, committee reports. Let's see. So Commissioner Paravanya, could you go see legislative committee report?
Yeah, in that my role is temporarily shifted with the commission. Scott Lillibridge has agreed to take over the chair of the legislative committee, and we'll be working with him to establish an agenda for a meeting soon. Other than that, there's not a lot going on at this point.
Okay, thank you. The Commissioner Al Hassan, could you share a report for the Education and Outreach Committee?
Sorry, I was just trying to unmute myself. Okay. We had a really productive meeting and we talked about the dissemination of our education and outreach materials, which had to do with the legislative one-page that Executive Angela Jamont reviewed and actually was included in our packets. Also, we had discussion regarding our staff outreach and engagements in regards to, we talked about the Go Biz and the Governor's Office on Business Economic Development, the webinar, which was very successful, and also the open air dining and curbside pickup guidelines and document that was distributed. Let's see, what else did we talk about? We're looking at educational outreach of data portal to the legal offices. Executive Director Jamont stated that CCDA just completed a 1-year research effort in regards to the usage of the database for individuals who are legally responsible to submit cases and complaints to CCDA from the federal and state courts. So the research clearly shows that many individuals who do not know about this responsibility. So CCDA has written informational letters to the state bar to distribute to the database and legal associations to target various legal groups. So this is something that we're going to be following up on. I had also asked if that would be something that disability rights would help in disseminating that information. Although it was stated that disability rights actually does not provide technical assistance to businesses directly, but she stated, and this was a member Hassan, she stated that she will ask the question internally and get back to staff. So we're still waiting to hear about that from her. Let's see, the rest of our agenda had to do with recognition of the service of Executive Director Angela Jamont, and wishing her well on her new endeavors. That was my committee meeting.
Right. Thank you. And then Commissioner Holloway for the checklist committee.
Okay, thank you. This is Commissioner Holloway. You may recall from our last meeting that the checklist committee has been working on an accessible parking campaign, and we were able to finally obtain a consultant to assist us with that. His name's Ron Toe, and he's a CAF, and also very involved in the construction industry. And so we've got a sort of a work group put together, a smaller group work group, and we've been trying to reach out and add to that group people from the construction industry, CAF's members, and we've reached out to large paving contractors. We've reached out to Chamber of Commerce's. We've reached out to building officials, trying to get as many experienced people on the committee. We're struggling getting people to commit to it, but we've been able to generate in the last month a couple more very knowledgeable folks to help us out. And so that's kind of where we are, and we're starting to make progress. And I just wanted to say one thing, and that is that when we started this process, this committee, this working group, we're primarily working with Angela, and with Angela's departure, I just want to compliment CCDA staff for having very effectively stepped in and really given us the knowledge and the assistance that we've been needing, and that there has been no stall time or anything in the process. We've just made progress from day one, slow progress, but we've been making progress, and staff has been very helpful. I just wanted to thank them for that.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Holloway. Any comments from members of the commission? Hearing none. Any comments from members of the public on these reports?
Chair Commissioner Downey, I do not see any hands raised or any indication in the chat regarding comments.
Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item number 8, financial review. So Phil McFall, I see that you're to present the revenue reporting.
Absolutely, and I'm going to be brief in mine because we are a couple different reasons. A, we're running short on time, and B, there hasn't really been any adjustments. So I've been speaking with the Office of Financial Services, and they've indicated that their accounting department is currently working on catching up. So we're in a catch-up phase. So the numbers that you see, they're going to look very familiar because I think we presented those at the last 2 executive committee meetings, and we don't. They reiterated that they don't have any updates for us right now. They're in a catch-up mode. I asked if when we could expect them, and they said we're in a catch-up mode. We will let you know. So I will stay in touch with them. So once I have updated financials, I will absolutely have those to report for the committee. But at this time, I don't have any adjustments to what you see on your screen. So we will. So like I said, in the interest of time, I'll move on. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to hand that back to Commissioner Downey.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments from commissioners on this item? Hearing none, are there any comments from the public on this item?
Chair Commissioner Downey, I do not see any indication of any comments that need to be raised by members of the public.
All right, thank you then. That brings us to item number 9, the operations manager report. Back to you, Phil.
Thank you, Commissioner Downey. One thing I really wanted to talk about today was the on Thursday, March 31st, Assembly Bill 361. We've talked about that quite a bit, which extends the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act flexibility of waiving teleconferencing restrictions during COVID-19 pandemic. It says will expire, but it did expire. So we've talked about it quite a bit, and I know the commissioners are probably tired of hearing from us about our outreach, but it's created a situation where we really need to be thinking through our meetings going forward. It's created an extra dynamic where we need to think about, having the meetings here in person, but, having people attend, but also we're incorporating the virtual. No one on the staff was here before the COVID-19 pandemic. So a lot of this is new to us as far as the in-person version. We are diligently working to try and make that reality, but we also, like I said, we have this dynamic of doing the remote and in person. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the travel if you're traveling. If you do plan on coming to Sacramento, if you can, as much as you can ahead of time, just give us a heads up so that we can book the flights. As you know, as we get closer and closer to the date, the price increases. So if we're flying, we absolutely will make it happen. We have a great staff and they'll make it happen as much as you can. And I know sometimes it's not possible to let us know that much ahead of time, but as soon as you can possibly let us know if you're going to be coming to Sacramento, we'll book flight or train or whatever we need to do in order to make sure that you're here. So as much notice as possible. So we have our full commission coming up in 2 weeks from today. And so, look, it's 2 weeks. So you don't have to let us know today, but as soon as you can, hopefully late this week or early next week, if you can let us know if you're going to be attending, that'd be great. So we can make arrangements for that. And then we won't go into a lot of detail now, but the locations, if you do plan on hosting, and we are doing that today, we do have some commissioners hosting in outlying areas. We want to make sure that we are up to date, and we will continue to update. We'll send out more information about what the requirements are if you are going to host in a remote area. You will hear from Abigail Ridge. I don't know if she's ever been introduced, but Abigail is our new administrative and legislative analyst, and she's doing an outstanding job. So you will hear from her quite a bit over the next few weeks, but we will continue to give you information about the ending of the Bagley-Keene. I mean, it's the extension, the meeting flexibility, open meeting act flexibility, and what it means to the commission. So I wanted to just touch on that. Next, I want to go into, there's a typo that I just want to mention on the committee meeting calendar, the date of the education and outreach meeting for Wednesday, August 24th. The date is not on, it's not August 25th, it's August 24th. So please make note, if you didn't have that on your calendar, it is August 24th instead of August 25th. Just want to make note of that. And next, I'm sorry, I want to refer back to Commissioner Downey.
Okay, I think then I'm to still in the same agenda item, but refer it to State Architect Ida Claire for what she wanted to address.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Phil, also for allowing me to address the commission today, or the executive committee today. So a little bit of history. DSA has our Access Code Collaborative, and what that is a representative group of stakeholders that advise DSA on our accessibility rulemaking. And the Access Code Collaborative was developed through engagement with our stakeholders in trying to determine a better representative process in advance of actually presenting our regulations for public comment, so that we are ensured that we have a very respectful process to air concerns about any proposed amendments and facilitate amendments to the Access Code and California Building Code Chapter 11B that do take into consideration, that address accessibility and equity, but also address all concerns of our stakeholders. And so our Access Code Collaborative has been in effect for 3 years now, and it's been very effective in creating very respectful dialogue and regulations that address the needs of individuals with disabilities. And it's governed by a charter that's approved by its members. And in that charter, the members serve for 3-year terms, and it is divided in half of the stakeholders so that there's continuity. We are at a juncture where we need to replace members. They have termed out. In other words, they cannot continue. They have to actually step off the collaborative. And if they want to serve again, come on at a later point in time. And this ensures that we have good representation, but also a good involvement of voices in the collaborative. So in our initial establishment of the collaborative, CCDA and the Department of Rehabilitation assisted us in selecting its members. And this was done purposefully so that it wasn't an element that DSA selected the members, so that we couldn't be I don't want to say accused, that's not necessarily the appropriate word, but it's the best word I can come up with right now, accused of hand selecting members that would then inform the access code with a particular agenda. Obviously, that is not our goal with the Access Code Collaborative. So we established a process that with our partners, the CCDA and the Department of Rehabilitation, in assisting us in selecting members, that process was much more fair. And so my request to you today is for that assistance. We do have 6 slots on the Access Code Collaborative that we need to fill. The process is starts with an application process that we send out to all interested parties and ask them to provide an application to us if they're interested in serving. And then once we receive the applications, we submit them to you and to the Department of Rehab. And you, from the submitted applications, put forth your recommendations for stakeholder representation. DSA also creates what we call a slate of recommendations. And then once we receive each of your slates, CCDA, Department of Rehab, and the DSA slate, we synthesize the information on a priority basis as to who was selected for roles and reach out to them and offer them that position. So our request today, last time the CCDA assisted us, which was in 2018, I believe, late in 2018, there were 3 or 4 members from the commission that volunteered their time to do this for us. We don't need that process through the entire commission. And so we are requesting today volunteers from the CCDA commissioners that assist us with that process. And so that is the request I'm putting forth. If there are any questions, I'll take them now. But we can also address this as well at the full commission meeting and take volunteers then, if that's what you prefer that we do, Commissioner Downey, because our application process has not started yet, but we are putting in place and trying to educate those that are going to be assisting us in the selection process and trying to get some meetings established for that. So are there any questions?
Yeah, Commissioner Clare, this is Commissioner Holloway. Are there any specific stakeholder categories that you're trying to fill? If there are, could you tell us what those might be?
Sure, yes. So they are represented, and I'm trying to go off the top of my head, but I know that our group is 13 individuals. We will need 1 disability advocate, which doesn't necessarily mean that that's an individual with a disability. It can be. Many of those that apply will select a category that they wish to serve, but they actually may encounter and be in more than 1 category, and they can indicate that as such. And those that select can determine whether or not they're selected for the category that they wanted to represent, or because there's greater demand, offer a different category for representation because they meet more than 1 category. But those that are disability advocates could even be an attorney that advocates for individuals with disabilities. It can be anyone really. We do have 2 positions for individuals with disabilities that are up. There are 4 on the collaborative, 2 are up for renewal. And those can be individuals with vision impairments or blind, hearing impairments, or deaf, mobility impairments, and cognitive disabilities. We will have an architect that is available to be representative of the design professional field, and a building code representation, and then 1 facility perspective, owner perspective. So it could be anybody who represents a very large ownership group, or perhaps someone that has multiple sites. And so those are the 6, I believe, that are up for selection right now. And we can provide more information to you on that process and the application process and the work that you do in the training session. And we'd also appreciate that you get the word out that we are looking for new members on the Access Code Collaborative, because others have timed out. So
This Commissioner Chair Downey, if I could, in the interest of time, it's we're down to 8 minutes and more agenda items to go. I think what would help, Ida, is if you could provide the staff with the description of those of this information and the particular categories you're looking to fill, provide them to the staff so it can go out in our full commission meeting packet in advance. That way people can be thinking of it in advance to generate some ideas. If there are any pressing questions on that, I'll open it, but in the interest of time, I think it's important that we move on. So any pressing questions?
Just a quick one. Is this a paid position?
no, it's volunteer. Thank you.
I mean, for the applicants who are applying?
It's volunteer for the applicants. Most of them will be held virtually. If we do feel there's a need for travel, we do reimburse travel. But there is no per diem and no and otherwise volunteer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then next item, still under the same agenda item, is the discussion about the accessible parking campaign with Bill and Brian Holloway.
Yeah, this one, again, we really covered a lot of this in the last couple sections ago with Commissioner Holloway. So I just wanted to show you here, we put together a summary. So this is for our strategic goal. We want to make sure that we're aligned and we were on the same page as far as where we're going with this accessible parking campaign. And if you look at the bottom, I won't go through each step. That's kind of the process we need to do over the next couple of years. This is a 2-year strategic goal. One thing I did want to point out, it just made me smile when Commissioner Downey was talking about apps, because we were already on that. At the bottom, it talks about application development for this. So Commissioner Holloway, if you want to jump in, I just did it.
No, I think that's good job. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So we are meeting. We'll actually be meeting tomorrow, and we will continue to meet as a group, and we're going to move this effort forward and make this happen as a team. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. All right. With that, I'll move on to the topic of the executive director vacancy, filling that, and that is back in your court there, Phil.
All right. Again, okay. So yes, we are in the process of we're reviewing the applicants. I can't think right now. The close of the application process was on the 24th of March. We've gathered all the applications, and we are currently in the process of getting ready to begin selection and interviews. So that will be happening over the next few weeks, in the next couple of weeks.
This is Commissioner Holloway. How many candidates applied?
I had that number. I thought it was 13, but it was 21, 22.
Good.
Yeah, so we have 21, 22 applicants, and they are, I didn't really look at them, but they are, looks like we're going to be in a good spot, so we have a good pool to choose from.
So isn't the committee going to be reviewing to select all of the applicants, or the
Yes.
screening process? So
Yes.
you'll be giving it to the executive committee who have been identified to support that process?
Absolutely. So the way it's gonna work is once there's a letter being devised, once that letter is put together, we're gonna actually send all that information out. I'm hoping by maybe the end of this week, early next week, you'll get some information. And it will talk to you of the next steps that are gonna in the process. But yes, those that have been identified as, participating in this interview process will be getting notification here very, very soon. So it'll be in the form of a letter, and it'll have all the information there for you at that time.
Okay, I wasn't quite clear because I know Angela, before she left, had briefed me on that we would be going through the selection process, but I thought we were doing the initial screening, but we're not.
You will be. What happened was I got all the applications in. They're all put together now in packets, and you will be receiving those, and there will be, I'm not sure if that's gonna be a meeting or I'm not, well, the steps for the next steps are coming. I'm sorry. I wish I could give you more information, but
Okay.
Hopefully by the end of this week, and I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that. So we
Thank
will
you.
moving forward with that very quickly, very, very soon.
I have a quick question for Commissioner Downey.
Okay.
So are we gonna be, or has there been a criteria checklist developed?
I would refer that matter to the chair of the selection subcommittee, and that's Guy Lemus, and I believe he's departed. We are running out of time, so we can follow up on that.
I'm
Thanks.
the call dropped.
Oh, you are there. Okay.
The call dropped and I was trying to get back in.
Yeah.
I am
Okay.
going completing the instructions to the search committee, Commissioner Al Hassan, by Monday. So you'll have all of the, you'll receive the resumes of all of the candidates that we have, along with a timeline for what we need to do. And so that's what I've said that. I'm sorry, I was delayed last week for health reasons, but we should be back on board by Monday.
No problem. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
If there are any other vital questions from the commission? Hearing none, any comments from the public on that item?
Chair Commissioner Downey, I do not see any
Okay,
indication.
good. All right, I'll move on to the rapid fire interim executive director report. So back to you, Phil, and perhaps Michael Paravagna.
I have identified some areas that I think need some work. There are 3 areas within ADA compliance that I think we can strengthen. And so we'll be working on those. And also, there's a concern about turnover among staff in the commission. And we've addressed that. Phil and I have addressed that with DGS, and it takes some budget adjustments to do what we want to do, which is to create a analyst position that starts at an SSA level and can be promoted in place to an AGPA level, which gives us the opportunity to bring people along and let them grow with the organization rather than try to find work elsewhere. And I'm also going to recommend to the new executive director that exit interviews be conducted. We received some input from a member of the legal community at, I think, the legislative subcommittee about contacting the local bars association to stimulate correspondence with the commission about litigation filings. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be working with the PUC, and they'll be presenting at the commission meeting. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of the commission?
Chair Commissioner Downey, I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, any members of the public wishing to address this item?
Chair Commissioner Downey, I do not see any indication.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I see. Agenda item number 10, future agenda items. Any suggestions on this from members of the committee? Commissioners?
Mr. Paravagna, it's my understanding that the commission has the authority to do fundraising. And I would like to put that on a future agenda for this committee to look at what alternatives might be out there and how we would structure such an effort so that we can enhance our budget.
Okay, thank you. Any other commission members wishing to address this?
Chair Commissioner Downey, I do not see any indications.
Okay. Okay. All right, so our next full commission hearing is on April 20th from 10 o'clock till 4. And it'll be held in person at the, let's see, maybe somebody else can read this more efficiently than I can. California Commission on Public Health, 1500 Capitol Mall, first floor in Sacramento. And our next executive committee meeting is July 13th. I'll move on. Any comments on these items from members of the commission?
Commissioner Hudson here. So
Yes.
we can attend remotely for the full commission meeting?
Yes, that
Okay.
remains an option. Yeah, so long as you comply with the requirements.
Thank you. I will be doing so. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
Chair Commissioner Downey, I do not see any indication from the chat or any hands
Okay.
raised.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, just a couple minutes late, 3 minutes late, I move that we adjourn. Could I have a second?
Okay.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
I wasn't aware of that. That's pretty cool. I missed that.